About 20 years ago, a Canadian power company was using spreadsheets to track their transmission bids. They ended up losing $24 million because of a simple cut and paste error. It's an extreme example, but the pattern is actually pretty common. Welcome to Charter Industry Talks, where we address common technology issues in industrial environments. Every era has its favorite tools. Right now, it's AI, cloud, and automation. But the underlying problems, like getting the right information to the right people, or making good decisions during uncertainty, or just keeping operations running when things break, those have not really changed. This series talks about those problems. We talk to people who have experience in energy, resources, and industry in general. I'm Roland Plett, a leader in Charter's industrial practice. Today, I've got two great guests with me. Mark George, who brings the business leadership perspective, and Wade Crick, who brings the technology transformation perspective. Welcome, Mark and Wade. So to get us started, let's talk a little bit about where this all starts. Where do you typically see spreadsheets or manual reporting first start to become a problem in the companies that you talk to?
So maybe let's look at it from a business context first, Roland. As we work with our clients in the marketplace, we really see this whole challenge of spreadsheet and spreadsheet management really hit as a business scales or tries to scale. And really, I see maybe three areas that impact a company's ability to scale. One is related to data volume first. Because what happens is all of a sudden you've got multiple people trying to open the same spreadsheet at the same point in time, make changes to it for all the right reasons, and then you start to have version control and perhaps even chaos get created. Second area in scaling really relates to this whole idea of so many sources of business data. And it is, we're talking about spreadsheets, but it really also is where is it in the database world? And I realize we're looking at this from a business context, but that ultimately you have so many sources of data that all of a sudden you've got to copy and paste from all of these sources. And at the end of the day, you don't even know which one is right. And in fact, sometimes you may have data conflict. And then ultimately, with all of these activities that you're thinking about scaling, if your processes are not coordinated or cooperative, they're going to get in the way. And all of a sudden, teams are going to spend hours trying to pull together what may be the simplest sort of analysis. And it, again, just relates to the fact that having so much data in so many places, spreadsheets, databases, and otherwise, gets totally complicated because then the processes aren't up to date. So that's where I typically see data become a problem, spreadsheets become an issue, manual reporting becomes an issue, is in the whole issue related to scalability.
Great point, Mark. Wade, from a technology perspective or technical transformation perspective, how do you see this showing up?
We're in the age of AI, and I guess one of the foundational truths about AI is it's to build great AI models and do great predictions, you have to have quality to work with. If you think about a scenario where you might have a company with, say, 20 salespeople, and they are keeping track of their customers in 20 different spreadsheets, then you have 20 versions of the truth. So, it prevents you from really having that source of truth, that gold record for the customer, because you can only have one record for the customer that's got to be accurate. And the same with, if you have a record in payroll and a record in human resources in spreadsheets that are different, again, how do you know truly what, who your employees are, how you're compensating them, so on. So you have to have consistency, quality of data to do the advanced work that everybody wants to do now, to do better business predictions. Think of, you got 20 salespeople with 20 different types of customers they're dealing with, and you'd like to have initiate a campaign to proactively reach out to those customers to offer them a new product or service. Again, you need consistent records to do these things that are beneficial to the customers and also to your own business.
I think we want to take a look at even a little bit further in terms of what the costs are of manually tracking your own data pieces. It really, I think for most people, tracking things in spreadsheets and in manual ways is really easy to get into. But at some point, it becomes unwieldy, as you both talked about. But I think the real cost of spreadsheets actually goes beyond that, right? Into the business is starting to get impacted, right? What does spreadsheet-driven work actually cost the business? How would you quantify that?
It does, spreadsheets, I guess, are an example of like a tool that's used, should be fit for purpose, right? And if you have to do a quick calculation or so on, it's perfect for that. But it's not an enterprise system of record as we would refer to. If you think about a core banking system, imagine if you're banking with the Royal Bank, and they're doing all of your account calculations with the spreadsheet. Of course, that would be a very frightening experience, right? And that's why you need robust systems for these critical business applications which require rigor.
Wade and I had the opportunity to meet an executive that ran a company with a very complicated spreadsheet that they used to do quoting for new business. So what happened over time was it became a complex spreadsheet. Nobody could figure out how to fix it when it broke. And then ultimately you're questioning the value of the data that's coming from it. So why bother in the first place? Now, I think the other thing that we shouldn't ignore here, particularly in the energy sector, is that so much work is still done manually. And that, the challenge on one hand is how do you scale your business, which is where we started this whole question, when everything or portions of your business are still manual, because there's no way in hell you're going to be able to scale. But at the end of the day, the other dimension to that scaling and manual work that's being done are security leaks. And I think I talk to more and more executives every day that think about sensitive financial or customer data that's exposed. These loose email, handwritten, manual processes become very exposed, and you have no ability to secure it. So, I think all the things we've been talking about relate to scalability, not just from a spreadsheet perspective, but also from a manual perspective, Roland.
Before we get to Wade, I want to just get your perspective on another thing that has been emerging in this discussion. How much is spreadsheet use and manual process work an indicator that maybe the processes haven't really been proactively figured out?
And it's almost like it's a Band-Aid. This is broken, but I can fix it this way. I bet you if you dig into it and you start to look at some of the direct financial costs, all of a sudden you're going to go, wow, because I've been Band-Aiding that, I'm miscalculating product margins and I'm underpricing contracts. That's like a death knell. And not only can you not scale your business, but you're probably not, you may think you're winning new business, but you're paying a price in the long term on your financial statements by thinking that this Band-Aid is working, Roland. So I think you're poking at a very important thing.
You have to start with the outcome you need in the business and work backwards from that. So what are the outcomes you need? Smart outcomes, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time bound, KPIs to measure that. then how you have to work backwards from that. So once you know what the goal is, work back, and it's very common in the various businesses I work with that the process of how work is done is not well understood. So, you can't automate something unless you actually know the workflow. So you have to spend time doing analysis around what the workflow is and so on. And then, of course, you can see where there's a spreadsheet or email used to do something that could be automated and improve the business. And you often benefit from having from somebody outside the organization look at it. The challenge that organizations get into is often 80% of the work that's done is just simply keeping the business running. It's not about innovation. And businesses will benefit from having somebody from outside look at it and sort of ask why 5 times, why do you do this? And then arrive at really the root reason why it's done. And that leads to insight around how something could be improved. But it really does often take an outsider just looking at it to be more objective. Of course, everybody wants work is hard. Most people at the company they're at work really hard to get work done, but nobody ever steps back and says, "Why am I doing this?" And you need that outside view often to just say, "Why are you doing it that way?" And you need that outside view to kind of trigger you to have a deeper thinking about why you do something and looking for an opportunity to automate it.
Well, and Roland, here's a real life example. If you looked at the oil and gas market, but it's probably the most disrupted right now because almost, I don't want to exaggerate, but almost second by second, minute by minute, hour by hour, something's going on. Lots of ramification to that in the global markets. It's not a Alberta thing or a Canada thing. This is happening on a global basis. And so the companies that can best cope with that have access to real-time data that allows them to look at trends that may only be an hour old or a day old or a week old, but they can adjust. So back to my point about market leaders, again, I think this idea of having real-time visibility to data, your ability to pivot and shift your business in real time makes you a market leader. Yeah. And the companies that are the market leaders are using some of the new tools that Wade referred to, AI, predictive analytics. But at the end of the day, it's some sort of model that the data they're pulling from enables you to make the best business decisions, whether they're supply chain decisions, whether they're M&A acquisitions, whether they're how do I finance my company to move forward? Is this market going to be as successful as we anticipate it to be? Your ability to use the data and do this proactive problem solving and data analysis, I think is more important than ever.
Roland, if you remember that tech company that you and I worked at, where at one point every salesperson had their own spreadsheet, eventually when the company did migrate to a very robust CRM, that was a very, very important tool to the senior executives because now they had a worldwide view of customer buying patterns, customer requests, and so on, and that really helped them focus on what product and what services to bring to the market that would be desired by the customers. It was truly a game changer in many ways for them. And frankly, the return on investment was probably measured in months, I would say, not years, in terms of doing that.
Yeah, which brings up another point that ultimately, operations are losing value because the decisions that are being made lag real world events. and that's what we're all poking at here.
Yeah.
That if you can empower your members of your company to move from manual data reconciliation to strategic exception management, that speeds up all decision making. And more importantly, if we think about the issues that our clients are concerned about, safety, productivity, people management, it all gets taken care of at the highest level. And you're moving from this alert notification world to autonomous human oversight. You couldn't ask for a more effective decision-making platform, because at the end of the day, it's also enabling AIs, I guess, enabling your decision-making at the highest levels.
The whole topic of operational friction really goes in multiple directions, and we're going to explore a few other ways to come at this topic in the next few segments. But what I love about what you're saying is you're foreshadowing from this spreadsheet reality into some of the other operational friction points. Things like, how do we make decisions faster and better, right? Things like, how do we get a process to be more ingrained in the system rather than exist in someone's head? And these are both topics that we're going to talk about a little bit more in future segments. So great reference points there. Anything else that you would either of you would like to add in relation to making a transition away from spreadsheets and into more sustainable processes and systems?
Maybe I'll just add a comment around, a notion that, workers, employees at a company using spreadsheets to do their work right. Often, along with that, they have domain knowledge that is not recorded, written down anywhere. And right now in Alberta, in oil and gas, the energy industries, prediction is that we need 72,000 new employees to address the retirements that are coming in the next roughly 10 years. That's a big, huge number, right? And of course, when you have very senior people that have been in your business for 20, 30, 40 years, what they do in the spreadsheets only a very probably 1% of what they actually know, right? And so, you have to have other tools to capture their knowledge, expertise, because that's immensely important to any business. The most important asset any business has is the people that work at the business, and like our industries are facing this great outflow of expertise here over the next 10 years. And, that's why we're going to need 72,000 more people in Alberta to replace the people that are going to retire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. So Wade, from a security and even just process optimization perspective, how do you see those gaps between the origination of the data and what executives want to see? Where do you see issues in that process if we don't have a complete system?
Well, of course, as Mark mentioned, executives have to make critical business decisions with accurate, trusted data. So imagine, Roland, that you and I are part of a team that has to report to Mark. So you do some calculations. That includes doing currency exchange calculations, US to Canadian dollar, and then you send the spreadsheet to me, and then I have to go add some extra work to that. But maybe I use a different calculation now to do the currency exchange. So, and then I send it to Mark. So how does Mark know the lineage of that? Like who touched it, who did what changes to the calculation, that erodes the accuracy, the trust in it, right? And it's very hard to control that with spreadsheets that, go through multiple email chains, et cetera, right? You will lose the lineage very quickly. Nobody will know if it was actually accurate and has been modified correctly and so on.
You need to have teams stop spending so much time gathering data, but empower them, provide them the tools, provide them the framework, have the processes in place that allow them to look at analyzing it and what it means. Otherwise, any leader in any company are going to continue to get these summaries produced as they roll up in the organization. They're going to lack the granularity that's needed, and the best decision is not going to get made. I'm absolutely positive about that.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to wrap this. We're going to get into decision making a lot more in the next segment, and also some other process challenges when we get into the final segment. Before we wrap up this video, I'd like to share with you that Mark, Wade, and I work with an advisory and technology company called Charter. Charter works with industrial companies to identify where manual workflows are slowing operation decisions. The goal is not to replace every familiar tool overnight. We work with our clients to understand which workflows have outgrown informal workarounds and where integrated systems can take out operational friction. By combining process expertise and technology modernization experience, Charter helps teams move from fragile, person dependent reporting to scalable systems that support faster, more confident decisions.